Welcome, everybody. Frank Vespi here from Maryland Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz, the racingbiz.com. Maryland Racing Today, part of the Midlantic Racing Today family of podcasts, and is powered, or rather presented by our friends at the Maryland Jockey Club. Also, programming note, this week we will be debuting Charlestown races today. That's going to be coming out Thursday. Keep an eye out for that. That should be a fun show. We're looking forward to bringing Charlestown into the fold. Maryland Racing Today, available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts. Please do like and subscribe. It helps us out quite a bit, and we appreciate it very, very much. So without further ado, our conversation today going to be with Andrea Seefeldt Knight, former jockey. Andrea, multiple graded stakes winning jockey, rode in the Kentucky Derby, rode in the Preakness, won the final race of her career in 1994, then came back and rode in the Lady Legends races at Pimlico in the 2010s and won the last one of those. So she won the last race of her career twice. Let's bring in Andrea. Andrea, hello. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. And you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me here. Now, did you know that you had won the final race of your career twice?
Well, the second time, yes. The first time, no, but it was in the back of my head. And Dickie and I had talked about it for months up to the race, which is
that right?
really an anomaly. You can't really. Yes, we talked about me retiring and if and when and that kind of stuff. And he was for me retiring, and he wanted me to see me walk away, whereas his brother didn't walk away. And I'd already had a lot of injuries and was married for 2 years, and he was thinking that I've already done pretty much what I could do on the track and that I had a whole life. It's been 30 years since then. So he was right. I had more to look forward to.
Right. Interesting. So yeah, it was the Pontalba Stakes was your with Broad Smile in on 11/27/94. Yep, down at the fairgrounds. You had just run third in the Cigar Mile, or I think I guess maybe it was the Naira Mile back then, but like the day or two before. So
I don't remember that. I do remember writing Punchline. I just don't remember the timeline.
I looked it up obviously before we did this, but I wanted to bring in a couple things, a couple interesting posts recently that you had put up, and I wanted to talk with you about. And the first one involves it, and this kid's been in the news a little bit. Eliseo Ruiz, jockey, was riding at Parks. He's a guy who's been riding Take the Money Honey. For people who pay attention to Laurel, we've seen that horse quite a few times, and she's very, very good. And Ruiz was aboard a horse named Bailout Billy on March 31st, and we're going to pop that race up right here. He's going to come under some fire for this ride, and we'll see this in a second on the video here as we're talking, Andrea. This horse goes to the front, well clear after a half mile. Horses begin to come to her in the lane. Ruiz pretty much sits chilly basically all the way to the wire. The stewards said they were looking into it. A lot of racing fans were and bettors were not very pleased with what appeared to be a pretty indifferent ride. But you and some other riders came to his defense, and I wonder if you would speak to that.
Myself, a lot of riders, trainers, grooms, exercise riders spoke up, and everybody knows of that one horse that you can't hit or whip or move on in a race. And so it's rare, but there are the few horses that won't run if you try to make them run. And some of them it takes a while to figure it out. It's very subtle. Some of them they'll prop and stop fast. There have been a ton of them. I had one or two more, maybe one at Penn, but I can't remember specifically the horses. But I had rode one that I won a lot of races on, and she'd most definitely resented being encouraged.
Well, let's talk about that. I think you're talking about Star Minister there that you won several stakes with. So give us that sort of timeline. Like, what did you do and what did she do that made you realize I can't do anything but just stay on her back?
It first came, I'd ridden a few, I should have looked closer. I'd ridden a few races on her, won a few racers. Edgar actually won a race on her when I was in Japan. Well, that's the time, though, they almost scratched her because they couldn't get the tack on her. Dickie was saddling her outside at Pimlico, and she flipped and rolled under the inside rail and almost got stuck and bent the rail. And anyway, she was a handful, and we were at Parks for the chocolate egg, and I'm not sure which year that was. It was just a small, maybe $25,000 added race. And she pretty much ran off just like this horse that we just watched, Bailout Billy. She'd go to lead and she'd have her ears up and she'd be looking, and you can tell where a horse is looking by their ears. And when they have their ears both forward, they're looking ahead of them. Sometimes you'll see a horse turn this ear, so they're looking over there while ahead, and their eyes kind of work independently. The ears don't always go with the eyes, but a lot of times they do. So the Bailout Billy, like Star Minister, would be in front. Can't really rate them too much. If you tried to slow them down, you take run out of them. If you try to manhandle and try to slow down a horse, you're fighting them, they're fighting you, you're taking some of their run away. So it's better to just kind of have a light hold, which is what it looked like Elacio had. That horse and Star Minister both had their ears up at the chocolate egg, and she was looking in front of her. And she was cruising around there. She'd always been much the best in every race. I rode her first, and I didn't have to ask her to run because she just was better. So this race, we're going to win by 2-3 lengths, I'm pretty sure. And then I heard a horse come running on the outside, and it was running fast, and she was looking straight ahead. I think she was looking at something in the parking lot. God only knows she wasn't paying attention to the race. And I heard this horse running, and I was like, oh, come on. This horse is really flying. She was just kind of cantering at that point. She wasn't really slowing down, but it's kind of like being at a stoplight. You're in, you just took your foot off the gas and you're crawling a little bit, but somebody's already going 50 and they didn't have to slow down. So it's kind of that thing. You don't want to lose the momentum. So I reached back and hit her, and I was like, oh, I didn't get anything. So I hit her again. And it's like, oh my gosh, this horse is really closing. What's going on? So I switched sticks and hit her and hit her and hit her. And we won by like a nose. And when I watched the rerun, I could see that every time I hit her, she was swishing her tail. And that's an indication of a lot of fillies and mares will swish their tail when they're hit with the stick, but they'll keep running. But there's a few that you can tell they're annoyed that you're hitting them with the stick if they're swishing their tail. And now you'll notice that in races probably sometimes. But so when I watched the rerun, I was like, oh my gosh, you could see her slowing down. And it wasn't so, during the race, it felt like, the horse was just running us down and she wasn't really trying to, when I saw it, I could see that she was actually slowing down. And Dickie Small and I would ride to the races together and ride home. And we talked about it on the way home. I was like, yeah, she doesn't like being hit, Dickie. He's like, he saw it. He was such a horseman. He could see these things. And he said, okay, well, we'll just, not hit her next time. And maybe next time you work her, we'll test it out. And that's what we did. She was working to work her. It was quite an ordeal as well. She was a runoff for me in the morning. Fortunately, Dickie had a couple good exercise riders, Stacey Eagleton and Ashley Stees. They could both gallop her without her running off. I couldn't. She'd just stone run off. So Dickie would pony her. We'd trot a whole mile around the racetrack, and then we'd turn around about 1/8 of a pole before he wanted to work a half. We'd go back to the 5/8. And we'd turn around, and at Pimlico's happened to be like kind of in front of the gate. And you didn't want to do it when the horses were getting ready to leave the gate because they're going to, we'd gone back 5/8. And the one time we'd turn around and she would stop and stand there. She would just freeze. We couldn't make her go. She'd just stand there and she'd sit and watch horses train. And she'd just sit, stand there and watch the horse. She wasn't, if we tried to make her go, she would have reared and flipped and thrown herself down. So we just let her stand there. Dickie's pony, on the other hand, was freaking out when horses would work out of the gate. She'd just watch them work out. She watched like 3 sets of horses work out of the gate. The normal horse, and even Dickie's pony, freaked out when the horses come out of the gate and come at you. And then she kind of took a big breath and she stepped off, trotted up, and then just ran off. Just ran off to the wire. And then around the other side, about the 8th pole, I hit her. And she went from going 11 and change to 14 for the last 8th. So it's kind of, we would, every time I worked her, the next time I worked her, I tried not hitting her, but pushing my hands on her. And same thing. She's 11-2, 11-3, 11-1, 14. Because I just, pushed my hands on her. And even I tried chirping to her. Same thing. And that's the time when I chirped to her, is the time that I noticed that she would turn her head, cock her head like that, and look back at me with her right eyeball. And in doing so, that slowed her down. And I don't know if she's like, what the heck are you doing?
Right.
I'm already going as fast as I can. Or it was like, what do you want? Or I don't, but she absolutely would turn her head and look back at me, which made her slow down.
You're listening to Maryland Racing Today with guest Andrea Seefeldt Knight.
The first time I'm already good. What do you want? Yeah, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. The first time we tested that in the race was at Laurel. Now I'm not remembering. It wasn't the All Brandy, I don't think, but it was a 1.1 miles, and she really was a sprinter. She was 3/4, 7/8, maybe a flat mile. So this was a 1.1 miles, and I think first time going a 1.1 miles. I'm pretty sure she'd won long earlier, but it was not a tough stake race with older mares and things. And so I'd asked Dickie if he could enter her without the stick. Enter, because I'd heard that before. They'll announce like blinkers on, blinkers off, no whip today for whatever. And he didn't want to do that because he was afraid she was very unpredictable. And whips are useful in case a horse decides to bolt or tries to lug in, go over the inside rail. You can sometimes, not every time, sometimes keep them from running over the outside fence. You can use the stick and show it to them, wave it next to their eye, and they might see it and stop bolting. If that doesn't work, which I've had horses that did this, you can hit them on the nose with the stick. And sometimes you'll see the horse flick their head, and that kind of gets them out of that panic. They're in fight or flight. When they're bolting, they're just in fight or flight. They're fight or flight animals. I mean, it's fear of flight. They're just, they don't know what they're doing. They're just getting away from whatever thing that switched off their brain. And they bolting, which means going towards the outside fence. And then the other real drastic thing, an old exercise rider told me, is if there's no, like, if these things don't work, then you can hit them on the ear. And that's like last hope of getting their attention, which you don't want to do, and you don't want to hit them real hard because you could. So that it's kind of it. And there were a few times I had to do that, and it did work. But there was one time the horse did run into the outside fence, and I fell off when we hit the fence. Fortunately, I didn't go over the fence because it was a buoy and about a 60-yard drop down to the parking lot at the 3/8 pole.
Oh my gosh.
But so he wanted me to have a whip on her in case she decided to do something, because she was very difficult. Mr. Meyerhoff commented in an article that she was a difficult foal. Everything he bred grew up on the farm, and he was there with them and saw everything. She went to Edwin Merriman to get broken. He said she would just lay down. They put a girth on her and she'd lay down or throw herself down as well. I mean, I'm sure she would leap, lunge, throw herself down, leap up in the air, throw down. And she was huge. She was 17 hands. So she was difficult to break, difficult, all those things. I forgot where I was going. There's so much with the All Brandy. So he wanted her to have a whip because who knows what she was going to do, because she had been unpredictable. And so I carried the stick in the race, and she went to the lead, and she cruised around there. And at about the 16th left to go, she was empty, and I could hear the horses coming, but I didn't move. I mean, I knew if I moved, it's like, okay, can we just get there? Come on, Wire, hurry up, Wire. And she saw the horse coming, and she pinned her ears, and she just muscled it out till the end, and we won by a whisker. And it was Mike Luzzy on Gammy's Alden, maybe. But she just won. And the fans were screaming when he came back, and the stewards called me up and say, "What were you doing? Did you fall asleep? Do you need some coffee?" I was like, "No, I didn't move on purpose, because she's going to slow down." And, talk, and Dickie, with instructions from Dickie, we decided to do this. And John Heisman, I can remember he even came down to talk to me. And he said, "Well, we won't do anything this time, but if she had lost, it'd be another story." And then we went on to win a bunch more races, and it was just kind of, everybody knew. I think the fans knew by then. Vinnie Prone wrote an article in the Washington Post, and then before the Maryland Million, Andrew Byer even wrote an article. And so I think people were more informed that I wasn't going to be moving on her. And the fans were okay later. And I got beat a couple times. We didn't win every time with that method. There were a few times we got beat, but it was just, there were days the horses were better than she was on that day.
Right. Let's take a look. This is one of the races where you are going to sit Chile. This is going to be the Maryland Million Distaff in 1993. And it's everything you say. She goes right to the lead. Everybody's sort of chasing in vain. I went back, I looked at some of the comments on some of her races, and every race she won was like, did it herself on her own courage. It was all like the riders just sitting there, basically was what they were saying.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
How nerve-wracking is that?
I chirped to her. I had a migraine for a day or two before I rode her every time.
Did you really?
It was incredible. It's so hard to sit still when they're yeah, I did. Absolutely. It's when I first started getting migraines. But it's so hard to sit still on a horse. Even when you're watching a race as a fan, you're like, come on, go, go. And fans are out there with their program, beating on the fence, beating on their hands. It's hard to sit still even when you're watching a race. It's even harder to sit still on a horse when you know there's other ones coming. You're like, come on, go, go, go. And even in the Maryland Million turning for home, she was looking at the crowd, and I sat still, but it's like she was still looking at the crowd, and these horses are getting closer. And I'm like, oh my! So I tried to whistle. I'm sorry, that was another. I tried to whistle. So another long part of the story. A couple races before, Larry Reynolds had been in the race with us, and she'd been slowing down, turning for home, and he was behind. And a lot of Charlestown jocks, the old jocks, would whistle leaving the gate to get their horses to leave the gate faster. And it's a really loud whistle. I won't do it now because it's loud.
You don't need to
kind of like people would put two fingers in their mouth to whistle. Well, they didn't even need to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So I rode a summer meet at Timonium 1981 when I had the bug, and it was the whole summer meet. It was June, July when Pimlico closed, Delaware was running, and until Laurel opened in the fall. So I rode a lot of races there, and a lot of the Charlestown riders would come down during the day and ride, and everybody whistled leaving the gate. So I practiced I wanted to learn to do that. And I can whistle, but there are a couple times in a race when Larry was behind me and she was kind of slowing down. He whistled to his horse, and she like pinned her ears and sped up. So I knew it worked. So that day at the Maryland Million, they're coming, and she was still looking ahead, and I whistled, but it came out like shh, shh. And she turned and looked back at me, and like, oh no, I didn't mean it. Like I was just literally threw the reins, dropped the reins as far as I was. I was like, oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. And right at that moment, Larry whistled, and she dug back in, and she just ran as hard as she could to the wire to beat them. But it was very nerve-wracking. Very.
Well, it's funny because
it's harder to sit still on a horse.
I was talking with Forrest Boyce the other day. She won on Quince Brew in one of the stakes Saturday at Laurel, and he's a horse that you can't hit. I think you can ride him a little more aggressively than like Star Minister, but the instructions are basically not to hit him. And I asked the same question. She said, it's so stressful. But that actually leads to another place I want to go to with
It's hard to sit still.
Yeah, which is this. You put up a post the other day saying when you retired, which was 1994, you expected within 20 or so years about half the riders would be women. We're not close to that, and my guess is might even be behind where they were 20 years ago. What's your take on that?
I've been thinking about that for the longest time, and I was like, well, are just girls not as tough, or the millennials not as tough? But I've been around, and not around many younger generation, but I've been around enough that are very motivated, and so I don't want to think that about the generation. And then I thought, well, maybe they're just smarter. They're just smarter than we were, because it's pretty tough. It's really you've got to be young and dumb to be a jockey. You really do, because if you stop and think about it, as you get older, the heart gets smaller and the brain gets bigger. It's actually traumatic. It's actually traumatic. I mean, it's not just with dealing with the horses. The good horses are easy, but there's so many bad horses, and there's so many things, freak accidents that happen with them because they're fear of flight creatures. They're just unpredictable, and they're big. And then there's also the getting fired. You win on a horse and get fired because Kent DeSarmo's in town for the Maryland Million. It said, well, that happened to me with Reputed Testimony. I'd won a bunch on him. And then Maryland Million, they took me off and put Kent on him, and he won. But then the next year he fell down, which wasn't good. But so anyway, it's you've got to be really tough. I mean, it's really hard getting fit. It's hard to get somebody to give you a chance. It's hard physically. You've got to get strong. The horses are. I rode show horses when I was a kid, and I just thought it'd be easy to be a jockey because girls can ride. And the show world, it was mostly girls, hardly any guys. And when I came to the track, I still thought that. But then I started riding. I was like, oh, wow, this is really hard. Because most of the time I just got run off with. I couldn't slow them down. So it's hard. It's really hard. And that happens one horse and the trainer fires you kind of thing. So it's hard to get going for a boy or a girl. Back then, it was much harder for a girl because there weren't as many girl exercise riders. Now I'd say it's more girl exercise riders than boys. Actually, no, I haven't been there recently to see. But 10 years ago when I was there getting fit for the Lady Legends, there were a lot of female exercise riders. But so it's hard to get going. I think one time I said, you need to be able to withstand fear, rejection, pain, cold, rejection, fear, pain, cold, rejection. I mean, it's just... it's hard. Getting fired. Yeah, it's over and over. It's very difficult to do, to make it for anybody. When I was coming around, there was still male chauvinism. I mean, there really was, because women at that time really didn't have other careers other than the appropriate careers for women then were nurse, librarian, teacher. Those were the female jobs. Women weren't engineers. They weren't CEOs. They weren't running companies. They weren't starting companies. So we had to deal with that bias as well. But, Julie Crone broke the barriers. PJ Cooksey in Kentucky, Waterford, she was leading rider at Waterford. That was before I started riding. So women were... talent rose. I mean, that's what I made a comment the other day that another young girl just posted about how hard it is to get going, and that a trainer commented that a lot of trainers were taking her off because she was a girl and they wanted to put a guy on the horse. I'm like, well, that happened 45 years ago, even more. The worst thing I heard then was the trainer would say, well, I don't want to put you on my horse because if you got hurt on my horse, I couldn't live with myself. Oh, it's okay for the guy to get hurt on your horse? That would make me really mad. So now if I don't ride your horse, I'm going to go ride for a worse trainer that has worse horses, and I've got a better chance of getting hurt on his horses than if I got to ride your horse. Right. And we also had, surprisingly back then, were the trainers' wives. I can't tell you how many trainers told me I can't ride a girl because of my wife. I'm like, what's that got to do with anything? And they said, well, my wife will get jealous if I talk to a woman. If I have you on my horse, they're going to question. Yeah, they would say that the wives would get jealous if a girl was in their barn. And a lot of times they didn't even have girl exercise riders because the wives would get jealous. That's what they said. I don't know if they're just using an excuse or if that was... I think it was true for King Leatherbury. He did tell me, because he did end up, like the last year, I think he rode Jenny Steisted and a few girls towards the end of his career. And he said it's because his wife didn't care anymore. When he was younger, that he said she'd kill me. And I did hear some stories about, I don't know if that's, I don't know that they were true stories, but yeah, I think he believed she would kill him.
That would be bad.
Yeah, so that would be bad. So now, I thought about, like maybe they're just not tough enough, or they're smarter than we were, because in the 80s, 90s, late 80s, but early 80s, it was still very hard. By the late 80s, being a girl didn't make any difference.
Really?
Just rare people. I remember the stewards put me on a horse for Judy Tuminelli at Timonium. And like, as the only available rider, that's how I got started in the game, because there would be horses the day of the race where the jockeys said, I want to ride that horse, and nobody'd want to ride him. So they'd put me on the horse and I'd ride him because I was happy to ride anything then. I wanted to be a jockey. But so Judy Tumatelli, he was old Italian, and he took me off the horse. So the next day I went to his barn and introduced myself, and guess, oh, I really, I could have made that horse run better than that guy, and this and that, whatever. So, but it didn't bother me. I'd just go, and I actually got into a few barns that way, going back to see him. Say, oh, too bad, I think I could have done this or that. But so it's hard, and so now I'm thinking, okay, they got smarter. They're not going to do with that. And then I finally just realized in the last few months about how short the fields are now, how much less racing there is. So how hard it is for any jockey now. There are so many riders and so few horses. Right. In the 80s in Maryland at Laurel, we had two or three 14-horse fields a day. In addition to, the rest of the races were 10-horse fields, 9-10 races. There were hardly ever any 6-horse fields then. There were full fields.
6 days a week.
There was racing 6 days a week. There was, at Philadelphia, Garden State, New York, Penn National, 6 tracks running every day. So there were just so many more opportunities. So I think it's harder now for anybody to get going, but it's still gonna be harder for the girl. The old adage of you've got to be twice as good,
right,
to be considered half as good. But fortunately, that's not hard.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to an owner, a friend of mine, the other day, and we were talking about one of the female jockeys at Laurel, and I said, I think she's really underrated. I think she's really good. And he said, I agree with you, but whenever I go to my trainer and say, what about we put her up? He says, well, she can't finish. And it was sort of interesting because I'm curious, one, how many times did you hear that as a rider that, the girl can't finish? But two, it's also like races are usually won someplace else other than the finish, by making the right move at the right time or putting the horse in the right spot or judging the pace properly. And I'd rather have all those things going in my favor and give a little on the finish than have the person who can finish best, but maybe doesn't give them the best trip to get. Is that something you heard?
I agree. The whip is, oh, did I hear? I did, but not at the end of my career. I worked very hard once we got the equicizer. And in the early ages, most girls, you never wanted to hear you look like a girl on a horse. And really the reason that came around was because the early female jockeys didn't ride enough horses to get strong enough and fit enough to not look weak and to not be weak. It takes a lot to get fit to ride a race, and so by, I had the bug, I won my 5th race, and I had shipped to Penn. I started in Maryland, won a couple at Delaware. We're back in Maryland in the fall, and I'd shipped to Penn and won 2 races the night before. And my own agent was making my rounds the next morning, stopped by Dickie Dutrow, and, he said, Andrea, and he said, I don't have anything for you. I guess, do you have anything I can work? Can I help you out? No, I don't. He said, but let me ask you this. Why wouldn't you go to Penn National or Charlestown to ride where you could ride a lot of races? And at that point, Joe Flash did comment, and we thought we were two guys like, I'm too good to go to those places. And then I was like, well, wait. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I want to be a jockey. I'm going to Penn National, because the bull ring scared me. I'd gone to Charlestown and rode, and wow, those guys are tough. I mean, those girls and guys there, it was tough racing there. And it was more, you really did a lot of sending, and I was more of a sit still rider at that point even. So I went to Penn National. I begged Chicky Lang, like, can you find me an agent at Penn? And he did, thankfully. I got a good agent at Penn, and I did really well with the bug. I was riding 5, 6, 8 horses a night at Penn, and I was winning races, and I learned how to ride, and I got fit. So that when I came back to Maryland, I looked like a jockey, and I didn't hear can't finish on a horse anymore. But then when we got, it was after 91 when I broke my collarbone. Jeff Lloyd loaned me his equicizer, and then I bought my own equicizer, and I would even, dark days or days I rode, I would watch the reruns on my equicizer and ride. I would watch myself, I'd fault myself, and I would ride the wooden horse to figure out how to make myself look stronger. And it really wasn't actually, and I was stronger and I was fitter, but it was more of looking stronger. Is that, and at one point I had a really heavy whip that when I hit the horse, I could hit him really hard. And I felt that, felt the action from them going forward. And when I watched the rerun, I looked really weak with that whip. I was like, I looked like a girl hitting that horse because it was heavy and just like slow motion. It didn't look like I was very effective. So that's about when Rick Wilson came to Maryland. Rick the Whip, Rick the Stick. Well, he would hit a horse 100 times and back. And this is back when.
Back then you could.
Times have changed, fortunately. Back then, well, you also got chastised if you didn't. They wanted a strong rider. They wanted a rider hitting them every jump of the way. Jock didn't try hard enough. And even at Penn National back then, if you finished last, you were supposed to still be putting out fourth effort with making them go, even if you were last. It was like even the regulations and people betting on you, they want to make sure you were putting out 100%, getting as much as you could out of the horse, even if you were last. So it was, it really was important, the whip then. And I did say it was overrated. But so I watched Rick and I felt his whip one day. And it was really light and it had a lot of like flex to it. And I was like, huh. So I tried a light whip and like, wow, I can hit them really a whole lot. And I can switch sticks real fast and go back and forth and look really strong, even though I wasn't hitting them as hard, but it looked strong. And and that was a lot of people say she looks like a man finishing. And that's where, so that was like the last 4 years I rode that, but it took a while to get there. It took a lot of rides, a lot of mounts to get fit enough to not look like a girl, but then I worked at it.
Well,
short answer, long
You're
story.
Listening to Maryland Racing Today with guest Andrea Seefeldt Knight.
We're looking for you to talk, not me to talk. So, so long answers are good. But those last 4 years of your career, you had your best years in terms of earnings. You won all the graded stakes that you won, and you became the second woman to ride in the Preakness and the third woman to ride in the Kentucky Derby, which is pretty nice run of things to happen all together. Talk about, I mean, how you got the Derby mount seems like a story in itself. Talk about that.
Yeah, there's so many good stories. And this young girl posted again that, no agents don't want to take her book because she's a girl. Well, yeah, I had that 45 years, a long time ago. And, when I started, they didn't want to take, I don't want a girl jockey. It's too hard. It's too hard to get business. So I learned how to do it myself. And at Penn National, same thing. I had that good agent in the beginning, but when I got hurt, I broke my back, came back, he had a bug rider and he didn't have room for me. So I had another decent agent for a little while, but every time I had an agent, I got hurt. So I just ended up doing it myself. And even Maryland, I had the good agent, and this is part of the Derby story, Bobby Suggs. So what a good guy he was. And, he had my book and he worked really hard. I'd go to Laurel, he'd go to Pimlico. We'd alternate days. I'd do Laurel and Bowie one day and Pimlico the next. And, people would say, Andrea, tell your agent I'm going in this race. So at the end of the day, I'd have to meet him and say, Bobby, we've got this race, we've got that race. So I'm still doing most of the work. And he tried really hard. And he said, like, I just don't know. And I said one day, I said, look, I appreciate how hard you're working. And I was with Dickie then. So I was giving away a big portion of the money and still doing the big portion of the work. And a few of my people that didn't like him too were like, I just want to deal with you. I don't want to deal with the agent. So I was like, okay, well, why am I still doing the work and paying? And so I talked to him. I said, Bob, nothing. It's not, look for another rider. I just don't want to, however long it takes, you get another rider. And so it took like 2 months, and he found Garrett Gomez, and he brought Garrett Gomez, and he went on to do great with Garrett, and then he got Mark Johnston. So it worked out well. Yeah, it was. And he always helped me. I mean, he would stick up for me because he was a good guy. So anyway, Derby time comes around. I was my agent. I'm reading the overnight, and here it's Thursday because that's still when you entered 2 days ahead. Thursday, I'm looking at the overnight at Pimlico's overnight. And the Derby was listed there, and I saw Mark Johnston. I said, oh, look, Mark's going to the Derby. I didn't have his phone number, but I had Bobby. So I called Bobby. I said, Bobby, that's great. You guys are going to the Derby. It's like, no, he just lost the bug. He's riding 9 races at Pimlico, 5 are for King. He just really can't go to Kentucky to ride 300 to 1 horse. The horse had never run over 3/4 of a mile. He'd broken his maiden going 3/4 of a mile. And Bobby's like, you should go ride him. I was like, yeah, right. And I was like, well, he said, what's the worst thing that can happen? They say no. I was like, true. Okay. Well, I won races for Reggie Varnold and the owner, Sam Morrell. So I called Reggie. Reggie said, fine with me. Call the boss. So he gave me Mr. Morrell's phone number. I called him. This is like 8 o'clock Thursday night now. And Mr. Morrell said, okay, well, I'll think about it. We've contacted 2 other jockeys. We're waiting for them to get back to us. But if they don't go, then we'll have you go ride. He called back at 10 o'clock and he said, pack your bags. Now, one of those jockeys was Julie Crone. So this is the only thing I've beat Julie Crone to, but it's only because she said no. So 10 o'clock at night, I was bouncing. I think I jumped over the sofa. I was running around the house, like just like, oh my God, I'm going to the Derby. This was never my dream. I'm going to the Derby. So I called my brother, woke him up. I even called Dickie Small and woke him up. And he goes to bed, I think, like 7 o'clock at night because he gets up at 3, or he did. And he was excited for me. It was just that it was fun the next day going around to tell the people that I was taking off their horses on Saturday. One of them was this guy, Jeff Weinhold, I was like, every time he put me on a horse, they won. And then I wouldn't be able to ride the horse. So they'd get beat a few times because I had to go ride one for Dickie somewhere. And then, then like I got back on this horse and she'd win again because she got back in the spot where she could win, basically. And so I went by his bar. I said, look, Jeff, I've got to take off your horse tomorrow. I'm going to the Derby. He's like, oh yeah, have fun down there. I was like, no, I'm going to the Derby. I'm riding in the Derby. So it was the best 2 days of my life.
Yeah. What was so you get to the Derby, as you said, you're on a long shot who ultimately runs like a long shot, but what was that experience of like being there, being at Churchill, riding in the Derby, all the stuff?
It was incredible. It's not like, Baltimore, you fly into BWI Preakness Day, you have no idea it's Preakness Day. Louisville, you get off the plane and it's Kentucky Derby Day. There's race horses all the walls everywhere, the Derby, pictures of the Derby, there's pictures of foals and running in the field all through the whole airport. I mean, everything is Kentucky Derby. You get to the racetrack. I actually got there late Friday night and just went to the hotel and didn't get any sleep because people were partying the whole night. The whole hotel was partying. Outside, people were partying. It was so loud. Didn't get any. I don't think I got any sleep. And I was excited too.
Yeah.
So we go to Churchill in the morning. I have to go get a jockey's license. Well, that's on the backside. Well, they've got extra guards and rent-a-cops, and I couldn't get into the backside because I didn't have a Kentucky license. So it took me about an hour to get in to get the license. And when finally somebody came by, they had a program. I said, hey, look at the program. That's my name. Here's my driver's license. I get to have to go in there to get the jockey license. But it took a while to get in. And then I went in the jocks room, and you had to be in there, I think, at like 11, and the race was at 6:45 or 6:30. So I went in there and had to sign programs and sign posters, thousands. Like the pool table was full of stacks of programs about that deep, and all the jockeys would sign the program, and like the valets and everybody would have a stack and they'd sell them or keep them or whatever. So it took a long time to sign those, and I read the racing form and couldn't really go outside and watch the races or anything, and so I took a nap. I got a good 2-hour nap before the Derby because I didn't sleep that night. But that's that's why I tell people it's another day. But it was so exciting. Then they did the jocks picture in the jocks room and get ready to go out, and we're sitting around, and I was watching the Derby, the TV in the jocks room. We're sitting there watching. It's like, you sit at home, watch the Derby every year, right? I mean, you watch all that stuff. Sure. I'm watching the TV, and somebody said, hey, Ziggy, come on. They called us out. I was like, oh, shit, that's me. They had said riders out, but I was watching the Derby. I forgot I was part of the Derby.
Need to do anything?
I'm just watching the Derby like every other year. But then walk out, and all the fans in the walk to the paddock trying to get autographs, and everybody stopped and gave them autographs and stuff. So it was and I failed to mention at the airport, there's electricity in the air the whole time. It's just like the place is vibrating. There's so much electricity, the vibes from everybody, and I'm getting chills thinking about it now as well. But walking to the paddock and then getting on the horse, and God, that paddock was tiny, and there were 100 people in there and 16 horses. Fortunately, that year it was a short field, 16 horses. And then the post parade, and we're going out, and all the people. And I'm just looking around, look at this shit. I'm in the Derby, couldn't make it at Penn National, and I'm here in the Kentucky Derby. And they got me on TV, on camera, like right at the moment. I'm going like, yeah, here I am. The fans at Penn, you can't ride Seefeldt. You should go home. Yeah, go home. There was one fan years ago at Penn. I'll never. He's like, Andrea, you should go home. You shouldn't be doing this. You could go home and be a wife, cook dinner for your husband. I said, yeah, I'll probably end up marrying some fat slob like you. And his buddies all cracked up. And so, that was kind of mean, but he was being mean to me. But right. So, here I am. I'm in the Derby. And then they started playing my old Kentucky home, and it was just like, oh my gosh! And the horse, and the coolest other cool thing was in the post parade, as we're going backing up, going back behind the gate, going the wrong way in the post parade, the fans in the infield, it was like doing the wave as you'd come by the sections. The cheering on the inside and the outside, it just felt like people were doing the wave. It was just so loud, and I remember. Trotting back, and I'm looking around, I'm absorbing all of this because the horse is 300 to 1. I have no chance. I just don't want to get in anybody's way, kind of thing. Was the only pressure on me is don't get in anybody's way, because headlines are going to be a girl jockey in the Derby.
Right. So, ruins chances for
backing up, and I'm just smiling ear to ear. Jose for Art Madrid, they're both in there, and they're on their horses like this. And I'm just like looking around, smiling, like, this is it. An Angel comes by, and he winks. He says, "Yep, this is it, baby. This is it." And man, this is. Then they called us to the gate, and it's like, "Oh man, this is gonna be over." And it just. I remember before I went, Vince Bricelli, Jimbo, tracked him down because he'd ridden Broad Brush in the Derby. He's the only person I knew that had ridden in the Derby at the time. So I was like, "Jimbo, what am I to expect?" He's like, "You're gonna be sending for all your worth away from the gate, and they're gonna be taken back and passing you." So at first when he said it didn't register, but it's like, yeah, that's so. Yeah, we found myself on the lead. The horse was pretty fast. I just found myself laying second with Chris McCarron on Sea Cadet on the inside, and Pat Day, I think Corporate Report on the outside. And after we got around the first turn, everybody I heard a lot of screaming behind me going into the turn. I mean, it was rough, and there's a still picture of the Derby going into the turn where there's you see the horse's head like this. Well, there's one horse in the back with his head like that, where he got shut off, completely shut off between horses. Going down the backside, I'm like, look at this shit, I'm on the leading Kentucky Derby. I was looking at the infield, I was looking at the people. I saw the people on top of the barns on the backside. I had dozens of people standing on the barns, on the roofs, and It was just pretty incredible. And then we're getting to the 3/8 pole, and I was like, wow, I still got a horse. And at one point earlier in the race, Chris McCarron said, hold on, Ziggy, slow down, Ziggy. I was like, I'm sorry, Chris, I don't want to ruin your horse. So I just sat still, sat off him a little bit. But so we're going around the 3/8 pole into the turn, and here comes the crowd. You can feel the horses coming. So Chris went to ride, and they're riding. So I went to ride, and he went. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got horse. And he went for about 3 jumps, and then the transmission fell out, and he went into reverse. The rest of the field passed me. 15 horses passed me in 2 strides. So as they're passing you, they take your spot. So this one would drop over, and your horse kind of goes away, and then this one would drop over, and I just took straight back, and that's when it really flashed through my head. Girl jockey drops so and so in the Kentucky Derby. I was like, oh my God, please just let me get out of here safe. And then I had 1/8 of a mile down the stretch, and I'm last by 30 lengths. I'm like, do I stand up? Because I really want to stand up because I'm really tired and I should ease this horse. But the stewards and the fans, and you can't do that. You have to put out. That was before. Now you could, and later in my career, I would stand up and ease the horse and say, I've got to protect this horse. I was like, well, this is the Derby, and there's TVs, so you've got to. So it was the longest ride to the wire ever. And then pulling up, it was long. Pulling up, walking back, I was next to Chris McCarron, and I was like, Chris, should I get off this horse? Should I lead him back? Because he's really exhausted. It was hot, and he wasn't staggering, but I wanted to get off and lead him back. And he's like, no, stay on him. I'll walk back with you because that'll look bad. So Chris is such a first class guy. And we walked back, and I was like, he's smiling like, I thought he won the race. He was so happy. He's like, did you win? He's like, no. I think I was like 5th, 6th. And he'd already won the Derby. So that's just what kind of race it was. He'd gotten beat, and he was still thrilled to be there. It's just an incredible experience.
That's really cool. Thank you. I wanted to, and we're going to have to let you go. I know you got real life to attend to, which is not talking about old horse races. But I did want to touch on one last race, which is your last race, at least to date, which was the Lady Legends for the Cure races in the 2010.
That's the last one.
And you won the very last one of those in 2014. But talk about that whole experience. How did you sort of come to be involved in it, and what was that like for you?
I mean, the 2010, maybe in January or the fall of 2009, Georgianne Hill called me and said, "We're going to do a retired female jockey race the day before the Preakness. We want to, in conjunction with Black Eyed Susan and the Susan Komen, the breast cancer awareness, and get more women." I was like, "Okay, I'm in, but you have to get good female jockeys," because I'd ridden in female jockey races a few times across the country, and it wasn't really, it was kind of, you didn't have Crone, you didn't have Donna Barton, you didn't have all the big girls in the races. You had just the local girls that had done well, and it was just more of an exhibition kind of thing. It wasn't, if you had Diane Nelson, if you had Crone, if you had Cooksey, if you had all the top female jockeys in a race. Well, they did here in the Lady Legends. That's what I said to Georgianne. I'll do it if you get, legitimate, if you get Crone, if you get Cooksey, if you get Mary Russ, if you get. So I was a little bit influential the first year of getting the riders. And then I said Mary Wiley Wagner, who was just getting, poor thing, she was just getting over surgery, breast cancer. And she, like, when she tells the story, she really wasn't even working out yet. And I said, well, and Georgianne, I said, ask her. It'll give her something to look forward to, even if she can't do it. It'll give her, and God bless Mary, she said yes. And in retrospect, when she tells me now, like, oh my gosh, she was really debilitated at the time when she said yes, but she made it and she did it, and that is courage. And she won the second one.
Is that right?
So yeah, I got fit, and I worked really hard at getting fit. Yeah, worked really hard at getting fit because I didn't want to look like a girl. And kind of, and Diane Crump, who was the first woman to ride a parimutuel race in Florida, anywhere, but she did it in Florida. And then she was the first woman to ride in the Kentucky Derby. And she was my idol. She was a great person. Then I finally met her in the 90s. She came to Pimlico. She was training and she was riding her own horses. But this time she was, I don't know how old she was. She was older, and she'd had a knee injury, and so she was riding long, and she just didn't look like, she wasn't a fit jockey. She wasn't fit enough to look good. And I was like, I don't want to look like that, because it kind of hurt my image of her. Even though I shouldn't say that, but it kind of, I was like, right. I want to look like a professional when I come back. So I trained very hard. I started months ahead. I started working out, which is great. It's helped my back and all my old injuries. Now, working out was such a blessing in disguise. I got fit and rode the race. It was fun working out in the morning, and it was just, I felt like a jockey again. It was fun training every morning. Working horses was so much fun. And all the trainers, Mike Trombetta, Cam Smith, Tim Keefe, Larry Murray, they all took care of me. They put me on nice, quiet horses because, they didn't want to see the old lady get hurt, which at this point, I didn't mind people saying that when I was, because I broke my back, my tailbone, my collarbone, pelvis, sacrum, kidney, concussions, amnesia, so I had, and then there were actually some compressions in my neck that I didn't know about, probably when I broke the back. But so yeah, I didn't want to fall off really, because it was going to be pretty bad. So it was just fun getting fed again. And then I rode the race, and the horse came running and finished second. And after the race, like, I want to be a jockey again. This is so much fun. I forgot, like how much great this was. But it was the end of Pimlico. There was no summer racing in Maryland. If I was going to ride, I'd have to go to, drive down and back and forth to Virginia, or to go to Monmouth or something. And I'd have to start over again and ride all the bad horses to prove myself. And I was like, I need to find something else. And that's when I found the competitive clay shooting.
Yeah, which you've been quite successful at, right?
I've done well. I've done decent. It's, but I didn't start shooting until I was 47 or something. So it's kind of done very well. kind of hit the peak in that game as well. Getting too old for that also. And my old injuries are catching up to me in that game. I feeling recoil from so much shooting.
So the last Lady Legends here, we'll pop this up. You are nowhere to be seen at this point in the race. This is aboard Zurst Gold.
You're listening to Maryland Racing Today with guest Andrea
at the end
Knight.
of the race, which is the more important part. But so what was that? You said, in 2010 or 11, whichever the first year was, you sort of flirted with coming back and then didn't. Did winning a race like this, did that make you rethink it?
Nope.
No.
No, I had a full-on panic attack in the post parade. Full-on, yeah, it had been fun getting fit. It was fun, everything. What was a sloppy day, it was 30-mile-an-hour winds. It was raining. I had the one hole. The horse had a little bit of speed, but not a lot of speed. And so that kind of, when you come out of the one hole on a sloppy day, if you don't make the lead, it's usually pretty ugly. And riding in, I didn't want to have to be in the, like you get to the turn and you have to take back or ride to get up in there. And I was apprehensive about all of that. And riding in all girls race, not that girls are dangerous or careless or can't ride. Girls don't cut other girls slack. So riding in the races with guys, if you're in trouble, you holler, hey, they kind of give you a break. Other girls don't give other girls a slack. I mean, it's tough. They're tough. They're not going to give you a chance. They're not letting you through. So it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to be in trouble and they're not going to let me through. It's like, so I was thinking about that. And then we started getting ready, like 1 minute to post, go to the gate. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was happy about riding. I was excited about riding. But then all of a sudden I started sweating. My heart started beating. I thought I was having a heart attack. It was just it was bad. And I was like, okay, well, just breathe. You're not having a heart attack. You can do this because, it's a real race. You do have an ambulance following you. I mean, the ambulance is there not to get you to the hospital. It's to get the jockey off of the racetrack in time so the harrows can go around and the next race can go off on time. So the ambulance picks you up and parks on the backside of the grandstand waiting for an outside ambulance to come get you. Even if you're, it's severe, they'll call for the helicopter. But so, my brain knew all this. I mean, it's real starting gate. It's real. So when we got in the gate, fortunately, it was riding for Franny Campitelli and his son, Chris was in the gate with me and he talked me off the ledge. And, but then when the horse broke, he broke slow and they all went ahead. I was like, okay, good. I'm just gonna gallop around in the back, which I'm good at that. And horses settle better when you're last. The dirt isn't hitting them. They're relaxed. They're breathing. When you're in the pack, they're kind of like there's horses around you. And kind of like when you're driving fast on the highway and there's cars on either side of you, you're a little more aware of that. So the same thing for the horses. If you're going to be back last, just be last and they can breathe and relax. And again, the old thing is we're coming around the turn, it's like, I haven't started riding yet. And the field's coming back to me. So then, I went to riding and, went to ride past a group. Look, the other horse you could see one horse in front. I was like, well, I'm not going to catch that horse, but I can get up for second. So I rode really hard. And once I got by the group of horses for second, I was going to be clear. It's like, God, I'm so tired. My legs hurt. And I'm out of breath. I could really stand up. And at the moment I was thinking that, the girl on the horse that was in front stood up. So I kept riding as hard as I could, and I got there and won by a nose because she'd quit riding.
Yeah, it was close at the end. Why do you think you were so stressed out that you were having a panic attack this time, but not the prior times?
Yeah, I think I had a little bit of the prior times, but not like this one. I guess because I think. I think it's a little bit like post-traumatic syndrome with a lot of jockeys end up later, Trevor McCarthy, he's come out and talked about it. Later, and Crone had some of it for a while when she was riding. She had such a traumatic injury when she broke her ankle at her leg at Saratoga on the turf. I mean, it was traumatic. These are traumatic injuries. It's trauma. We have a lot of trauma. The injuries, it's really, you're completely out of control a lot of the time. Things happen so fast. And really, I remember more of the trauma than I do the good stuff. And so my brain, it happened to me shooting. This is where, so my first big tournament competing was, a big one locally. And I thought, I could win the class I was in. I was excited about doing this. And before we started, as we're going, I started shaking and I got nervous. I'm like, what the heck? There's not an ambulance following me. There's no people bet on me. If I make a small mistake, people aren't losing money. If I make a big mistake, people aren't dying. I mean, the racetrack, jockeys can die, horses can die if you make a big mistake. You make a small mistake, people lose money. People lose money, you get fired. So this clay shooting, if I miss a target, it matters to nobody but me. So why am I shaking like this? I am not nervous. I'm not. And unfortunately, I'd had a visit with my doctor. My doctor, she came out for a shooting lesson, and she kind of started. And it's like, I get that. I don't understand why I get so nervous. She said, well, your brain is probably reliving the trauma and the excitement from being a jockey. And when I get excited, that's where my brain goes to that. And so I think the more the shooting amplified that. And I'd been shooting since 2010. This is 2014. I'd shot a lot in that time. So I think that my brain was ultra sensitive now to stressors.
Interesting.
And have worked through that with a little bit of meditation and breath work and stuff.
So I guess we're not going to see you on horseback again anytime soon, huh?
No, maybe on horseback, but not in a race. No, I don't come out of retirement again. It was really hard. It was amazing to see Barbara Jo Rubin, who was, I guess, in her 60s at time doing it. And I give them all the credit in the world for doing it then. I was 50s when I did it. So it's a young boy's game, I hate to say.
I
have to be young and dumb.
No, we get to be young and dumb. Hopefully once, but only once, right? The young part we can't control. The dumb part, hopefully we get out of eventually.
Well, it's the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe gets developed, and the amygdala. There's a whole lot of science behind it. When you're younger, under 25, your frontal lobe's not developed. You have no fear. There's no causation and fear relation. As you get older, your brain realizes that you get older and smarter. The frontal lobe, you start thinking and overthinking, and that's what's kept you alive this long. So it doesn't work well in the shooting game. You need to be more unconscious and letting your hand-eye coordination work. And as you get older, it gets harder to just do that because the frontal lobe is working. It's hard to shut it down. So there is a lot of science behind it. The vagus nerve, fear or flight, flight of fear, fight or flight, kind of thing.
All right, Andrea Seefeldt Knight, I'm gonna let you go. I really appreciate your coming to visit with me. Really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for giving us all this time here on Maryland Racing Today.
Thanks for asking, and enjoy reliving these things. Thank you.
That was Andrea Seefeldt Knight here on Maryland Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz, the racingbiz.com. Great conversation there. We really appreciate her doing that. And we appreciate your listening or watching to Maryland Racing Today. Maryland Racing Today is presented by our friends at the Maryland Jockey Club. Please do hit the like and subscribe buttons. I know I say this, but it helps us out. We appreciate it very much. That's going to do it here for this week on Maryland Racing Today. Again, a programming note: Charlestown races today, also part of the Midlantic Racing Today family of podcasts, kicks off this week. So we're looking forward to that. Next week, we'll be back with another Maryland Racing Today interview, and we'll also resume our handicapping news segment as well. So we're looking forward to that. Anyway, that's going to do it here. I'm Frank Vespi. Thanks for joining us.